Michel Davitt was born in Strade, County Mayo in 1846. His father was a small tenant farmer. He was born at the start of the Great Famine in Ireland, in which at least 1 million people died and a similar number emigrated. The family fell on hard times, and in 1850 they were evicted from their home. The Davitts emigrated to England, often the only option to destitute families at that time. They moved to a town in the north of England called Haslingden. Not far from Manchester, it had a lot of textile mills. Michael began work in a cotton mill at the age of 9. At the age of 11, he suffered an accident while at work. His shirt caught in a cog and his arm was crushed in a machine. His right arm was amputated. No longer able to work, he was sent to a local Methodist school. The accident became a blessing in disguise as Davitt received an excellent education. In 1861, Davitt began work in Haslingden Post Office. In the evenings, he attended talks by local and visiting speakers, including the Chartist leader Ernest Jones. Jones' anti-imperial message struck a chord with Davitt, who also joined the IRB around this time. The Irish Republican Brotherhood was a secret organisation fighting for freedom from British rule. They believed in violence to achieve their aims and were known as Fenians. Under observation by the police, Davitt was arrested while waiting to take a delivery of arms at a London train station. Convicted of treason felony, Davitt was sentenced to 15 years in prison. In 1877, Davitt was released on a ticket of leave or licence, which is like modern-day probation. The years in prison changed Davitt's approach. He felt his suffering had changed nothing. He began to travel around Ireland and England on speaking tours, gaining experience and skill in talking to large groups of people. In 1878, he travelled to the USA, seeing family in Philadelphia, and speaking at public events. While there, he also met with the established Fenian John Devoy. They worked on Devoy's new departure, a plan to get Fenians working with the politicians of the Home Rule Party. This was a radical idea at the time. During this time, Davitt began to focus on the issue of land ownership in Ireland. In 1870, just over 3,700 landowners owned 80% of the land. Most farms were very small, tenants had few rights, and many landlords were not Irish residents. On his return from the US, Davitt travelled to Mayo. In Castlebar, he met James Daly, who was supporting small farmers through his newspaper, the Connacht Telegraph. The Land League of Mayo was formed by Davitt, Daly and others on 16th of August 1879 at Daly's Hotel in Castlebar. The objectives of the League were to defend tenants' rights against landlords and to bring about the conversion of tenants into owners of their own lands through the collective action of the tenants themselves. In October, Davitt combined with Charles Stewart Parnell, the politician, to form the National Land League. This was Devoy's new departure in action. In 1880, tenants were told to hold the rents and pay no more in rent and arrears from the sale of crops than they could afford. By collective action, they looked to make large changes to the existing system. This became known as the Land War. The Land War was effective. The British government came down hard on the protesters with the Coercion Bill in 1881, but also brought in a Land Act that same year. This gave tenants many of the rights they sought: fair rent, fixity of tenure and free sale. Land courts were set up to establish fair rents. A land commission would make it possible for tenants to purchase their lands with state loans. Davitt and Parnell felt that these reforms did not benefit those most in need in Ireland, so they continued to agitate. Both were arrested and imprisoned. During this time, the League was run by the Ladies' Land League, who supported and fundraised the ongoing actions in Ireland. In 1882, the Settled Land Act was brought in. This addressed many of Davitt and Parnell's concerns. They agreed to halt the land war. At this point, the two leaders' paths diverged. Parnell reformed the Land League into the Irish National League. Davitt, although he had renounced violence at this stage, was still a radical and wanted nothing less than the destruction of landlordism. He now looked to other means to achieve this. Davitt became an MP in the British Parliament. He used the floor of the House of Commons in London to argue for the rights of the poor and dispossessed from all nations. He allied himself with the cause of the British Labour Party. Like them, he believed absolutely in the power of the labour movement and collective action. During this time, he published a newspaper called The Labour World. The penny weekly promoted the labour cause. In his years as an MP, he travelled widely. He wrote extensively and had 6 books published. He died on 30th of May 1906 in Dublin. He was 60 years old. In his will he had said, "Should I die, I wish to be buried at Strade, County Mayo, without any funeral demonstration." Michel Davitt, 1846 to 1906.